Well, guess there's no time like the present, so here goes nothing. Welcome to Mythic Reviews number 1. Transformers Power of the Primes Battletrap. So, Battletrap here was released in mid-2018 at the tail end of the Prime Wars trilogy, the second wave of Power of the Primes to be specific. He's an extremely fun figure, but some of you may be asking, who is Battletrap? Well, let me answer that for you with a bit of a history lesson. Battletrap debuted in 1987 and was one of two Duocons. Duocons were a pair of vehicles that combined into a robot. I use combined very loosely because it mainly just looks like a robot torso attached to some sort of ground-based vehicle, like a strange parade float. In Battletrap's case, he is an Apache helicopter and a Ford F-150 camper truck combined together. In robot mode, you essentially end up with a bust on wheels. Hell, you don't even have arms. Just a shoulder launcher. At least his colors are nice. As for appearances in media, there isn't much. He appeared in the Marvel comics, but mainly as a background character or fodder for more characters to beat up. He did appear in the back of the Headmasters cartoon, though, but again, just as your kind of generic goon dude. Good? Although he was unnecessarily large for a bit. As the years went on and the franchise went through various iterations and reboots, Battletrap stayed in the 80s and pretty much forgotten about for close to 3 decades. Until 2015, when good old FunPub decided he was obscure enough to make a new toy for it. And so they did. This figure was exclusive to BotCon 2015 in the Cybertron's Most Wanted box set. He was essentially a Generation Springer painted blue with a new head slapped on it. But it did work. Battletrap had a new toy, and a very good one at that. And everyone who remembered him was probably content for another 3 decades. But unbeknownst to them, they didn't have to wait nearly as long. This one of Battletrap was also his largest media appearance, being a main character in the tie-in comic of the same name that was released at the same time. While still being a goon by nature, at least this one had a personality and actually did things that mattered in the comic. Now, let's flash forward to today, or well, mid-2018, with Power of the Primes in full swing, which was essentially everyone they hadn't done a Generations toy line yet, with a few familiar faces sprinkled in so people would still have some interest to grab the toy line. It really felt like the final chapter in a Generations era that had existed for the past 8 years, and surprising pretty much everyone, Battletrap made an appearance. Now, Battletrap here is your standard deluxe-size goon, so he fits right in with the rest of your con squad. Conned? Although, he might stick out a bit because he certainly kept his late 80s G1 color scheme with a few necessary improvements. Starting with the top half, he replaces traditional light gray for an off-white, which contrasts so much better with the black and blues of the rest of the figure. On the topic of blues, they actually painted the cockpit windows on his chest in this great shade of metallic blue, and they even kept his black outline Decepticon symbol. Now, let us continue our blue period by taking a look at the head. And what a head it is. To upgrade the head for modern times, they decided to give it more definition and really bring out the angles, replacing the soft shapes and almost crown-like appearance of the original with this pure cuboid helmet while keeping all of the important details. Now combine that with the blue duotone, bluotone, color scheme that is used to keep the face from blending in like before, and his classic silver shades, this time taking up less surface area, and you have one hell of a head sculpt. Just don't look at the back of it. Moving on down to his lower half, and the first thing you should notice is actual legs and feet, instead of, well, a camper van. That being said, he does keep all the right details, like the yellow headlights, broad silver grille on the feet, and the red window ankles. Liberties were taken with everything above the ankles, which makes sense considering that the legs last time were just a slab of blue plastic, and we need some color to break up all that blue, even if it is a very nice shade of blue. So far, he is your pretty average generation style update to a character. But we haven't even gotten to his best part, his articulation. This figure blows pretty much every other figure in this size class out of the water when it comes to articulation. He has ball joints in his shoulders, elbows, hips, knees, and ankles, as well as a waist swivel and a head swivel. But probably the most impressive thing at this size class is the ab crunch. I mean, what other retail figure has an ab crunch at this size? Not only is his articulation impressive, but so is his balance. He has heel spurs that pretty much double the size of his feet, allowing for some fantastic right side up poses. And yes, that phrasing was intentional, because he can also do upside down poses. And by that I mean handstands. Not only can he do the traditional two-handed handstands, but can he also do one-handed handstands. And not even the most ninja of bots can pull those off. Now, with the robot mode all done, I guess it's time to check out the vehicle modes. Now, here are the two separate vehicle modes, and immediately you can tell that one of these is better than the other. So let's start with the weaker one first. So the helicopter is from Battletrap's upper torso, and it kinda works. I mean, it has helicopter parts, like the angled cockpit, both the top and back rotors, and air intakes, or at least the semblance of them anyways. But the entire thing just looks squished together and disjointed. The top rotor can spin freely, but that is only if you have everything positioned correctly, and that takes some doing, and it even barely spins freely. Now, let's talk about the front of this thing. Now, obviously it's the connector port that connects the two vehicles for robot mode, but they could have tried to do something better with it. I mean, it looks like you should be able to shoot some sort of marble out of it. And I mean, at least then it would have done something. Now, moving on to the truck. It is, in fact, a truck. It's got four wheels, it rolls, it looks like a truck from the 80s. It's got a boxy design with large headlights that take up about 2/3 of the grille, and a tow winch underneath them. And the red windows really help to break up all that blue concentrated in the front. The back is where it gets a bit messy, though. It's just a bunch of robot parts that aren't even trying to hide. I mean, I guess if you use your imagination, it does kind of look like a truck overfilled with junk, but that's about as good as you're gonna get. As far as features, the truck doesn't really have any that are unique to it, unless you count rolling as one. But both vehicle modes are the only modes you can interact with Prime Master. Prime Masters were the main gimmick of the Power of the Primes tour line, and most figures could interact with them in both modes, usually through an included accessory or some clever engineering. These vehicle modes have neither. I mean, I guess you could call it engineering, but it sure as hell ain't clever. You just kinda slap them on the back of the vehicles. I mean, on the helicopter, it looks alright, but it hinders the rotor blades even more than it already is. And on the truck, it just seems like you're adding more trash to the pile. So that about wraps up the vehicle modes. But there is one more surprise they have in store. Battletrap may be a deluxe sized figure, but he was not sold as one. In fact, he was sold as 2 Legends class figures. That's right, these little vehicles have individual robot modes. Meet Road Trap and Battle Slash. Now, starting with the Road Trap for a change, this little blue henchman looks like quite the bruiser thanks to his wide and stocky stature. Since he is Battletrap's pants, he does keep the larger bot's feet, but above them there are some pretty unique design choices, like the inner armored wheels and the armored up chest look. Speaking of his chest, the details there make way more sense than they did on Battletrap's legs or in truck mode, since they are there to break up all the blue. The head is very much a smaller version of Battletrap's, almost like their Pokemon, and Battletrap is his final evolution. He has the side slabs and the slick shades, but it's so close, yet so far. As far as articulation goes, he is pretty basic for the size. Head swivel, ball jointed everything else, but no waist swivel. Now on to Battle Slash, who is a bit of a weird one, and definitely the weaker of the two. But let's start with some positives. First off, his chest looks very nice with some unique molding and glossy metallic purple. And this black Deceptor badge, right dab in the center, is also a nice touch. The arms have some really good molding in these angled shoulder pads that come down almost to the elbow. The head is also very good while still being a very basic round helmet with slight mohawk. But that's about it for the good, so let's get into the weird. First things first, let's talk kibble. Now, usually kibble doesn't really bother me. I recognize it, I acknowledge it, but I don't pay it any mind. For example, the tail rotors on his legs. I see them, they're there, it doesn't really bug me. Now, what does bug me is the connector port that hangs off his butt and does nothing. If it was possible to rotate it around so I could sit flush on his back, it would have been fine, but I know that's not a possibility considering how he was engineered. Now, turning the figure around, let's talk about these hips for a bit, because boy, as you can see, they're very wide and pretty round. And while that may work for the shoulders of Battletrap, it does not work for this guy's hips. In fact, it makes him look almost human, which doesn't quite fit for a robot, especially considering the rest of his legs are the traditional blocky look. Doesn't help that the waist on my copy doesn't like to stay together. Now, speaking of joints and connections, let's talk articulation, because while he does have essentially the same articulation as his compatriot, like ball-jointed hips, knees, shoulders, elbows, and a head swivel, it's the shoulders that I really want to focus on. Now, instead of coming from the sides of the chest, like normal joints, these ones are on struts on his back. And while they still give you a good range of articulation, you can just tell something's off. It's like how you can tell a reused mold in a new toy line. It just doesn't look right. Anyways, that's about it for these two chuckleheads. On their own, they're fine. Good goons to use to fill out your Decepticon ranks, but that's about it. Where they really shine is when they combine together into Battletrap, but even then they still manage to make their presence known with spare arms and feet just kind of dangling off him, which is my only complaint. All in all, Power of the Prime's Battletrap is a fantastic figure who has a couple of tricks up his sleeve. even if at his core he is still the same nobody he was from the late 80s, but at least now he has some style. Well, that's it for my first review. I really hope you enjoyed it because I had a lot of fun with it, and I really want to make more. But to cap off this inaugural episode, there are two things I want to do. First off, I want to rank all the figures I review against one another. Not just in general, but also per line, just to see how they stack up. Now, since this is the first review, there isn't really anyone to compare them against, so Battletrap takes first place across the board. The second thing I want to do is to spin who sees who's next. This Battletrap's going to be a tough act to follow, so let's spin the wheel I have and see who comes out. Well then, we really are going to the other side of the spectrum with that one. Okay. Well, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time for the review of Studio Series Brawl. Oh boy.